Hi guys, just very quickly before we get started, I've just been watching back the first couple of minutes and I'm very aware that I'm erring and stuttering quite a bit over the course of the video. I'm probably doing it right now. I don't really hear it, so it's hard for me to just start again. It's because I've got dyspraxia. I have very limited mental working memory, so it's hard for me to think ahead about what I'm going to say. So I apologise for that just straight away because I appreciate that it can get quite frustrating because you're just trying to listen to what I'm trying to say. That is, if you want to watch my video at all. But yeah, just enjoy the rest of the video. Apologise for it. Hopefully you can get through it. If not, feel free to click off. That's fine. Cheers. Bye. Hey guys, it's Hazza or Harrison or whatever you want to call me. I wanted to make this video about the sort of Epic Games suing Google and Apple over the App Store and things like that. I've been very sort of on it on social media. I've been talking about it on Twitter. I've been talking about it on YouTube. Shout out to Hogue Law for putting out so much good content and lots of interesting discussion points to get from there. Basically, I wanted to make this video because for me, the sort of things that are being discussed in these lawsuits, the terms that we talk about in sort of the developer guidelines, things like that, they're things that have the things that affect my sort of professional life on a daily basis. If you don't know, I'm a software engineer, a software developer by day. So as a professional, so I work at a company called Yozu in Liverpool, and we put out web apps, mobile apps for both businesses and for consumers, just like the sort of people that might play Fortnite and might buy VBucks on Fortnite. And so the stuff we talk about, it affects me on a daily basis, and so I'm just got a vested interest. I'm deeply fascinated by what happens. I'm deeply fascinated by what is going to happen in the future. I'm well aware that antitrust lawsuits take ages to get through. So I'm going to sort of be patient, hopefully, but I'm sort of waiting with bated breath what happens. So I'm going to make this video. I'm just going to go over what I think about things. So just a couple of things first is that I'm well aware the camera angle is a bit terrible. I decided to give myself a face because I haven't actually shown my face on my channel for a little while. So this is me. Hi, I hope you're okay. Also, the camera, not the camera, the window is open, and I live right next to a fairly busy street. It's not very busy, it's residential, but it's the only way in and out of the cul-de-sacs that are down the road. So cars go down it fairly frequently, like one that's just going past now. So if you can hear that, then I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's sweltering in the UK right now. There's nothing I can do. Well, let's get started. And so, well, I've got the BBC News article open, which went out on the 14th of August, but I'm actually going to start a couple of months ago now. So, in my opinion, this all started with Hey.com. It started in June. So, in around April time, April, May, sort of invites started going out for Hey.com's new web email client, and this is made by Basecamp. Basecamp CEO, the CEO of Basecamp is called DHH. DHH, the sort of inventor, instigator of Ruby on Rails, well known in the software development sphere as being being very opinionated, very anti-corporate. He believes that a lot of corporate work and companies and just sort of a lot of the industry is doing things wrong. They believe in remote work. They believe you don't need an office to make a successful business. Ruby on Rails, in case you didn't know, is what Twitter was originally built on before they eventually swapped it out for something else, and in doing so referred to Ruby on Rails as Fisher-Price architecture, which I still think is funny, but it seems a bit weird because Ruby on Rails backs Shopify, which is one of the biggest apps on the planet. Anyway, basically, this sort of article went out going over the fact that Apple had blocked Hey's basically companion app for their new email client. The idea was that it was a companion app, so most people, as they expected, would use Hey using the web client, and instead they went and did it through the they decided to have an iOS client as well. They figured that this would be useful. People who are using our web client, they might have an iPhone, they might want to use it on the go. So let's make sure that there's an iOS client they can use. They put out the first version. The first version went through fine, and then in trying to create a second update, a patch for bugs that had been found in the first version of the app, Apple declined them to release it. And the reason why is because it was a useless app. Basically, Hey requires a subscription. You can't, when in its original form at least anyway, it required a subscription in order for you to do anything, just like Netflix does. And to my understanding, it redirected people to Hey.com's website in order to subscribe and set up an email and things like that. And this is expressly against Apple's developer guidelines. Apple says that your app can't be useless if you have locked content behind something that you have to pay for elsewhere. Then you can't tell people about it within the application. And then if that's the case, then your app needs to do something for free. The sort of caveat to that is reader apps. So reader apps are basically things like Netflix, like Amazon Prime Video, things like that. Spotify is one of them, where basically you're using the app to access third-party stuff, and Apple doesn't make that distinction for email clients. Basically, it doesn't see email clients as a reader app. You're using it as a application by itself. It has value by itself. Whether you agree or disagree isn't the point, but that's what happened. And so, DHH put out a tweet and said, "Wow, I'm literally stunned. Apple just doubled down on..." I don't know if that's too high. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'm literally stunned. Apple just doubled down on their rejection of Hey's inability to provide bug fixes and new features unless we submit to the outrageous demand of 15-30% of our revenue. Even worse, we're told unless we comply, they'll remove the app. So basically what they were saying is, allow us, you need to implement in-app subscriptions, in-app purchases in order to allow people to buy a Hey.com email and subscribe to the service for the year. And it would have to be $99. So they would take home $70 instead of the $99 minus whatever fee they were paying to the people. I assume it would have been Stripe or someone to sort of facilitate that purchase. But this generated loads of traction, this story. It went on The Verge. Tim Sweeney, who is obviously the CEO of Epic, he commented on it. It generated tons and tons and tons of traction, and eventually they came to a sort of agreement. They came to an agreement, basically saying that the Hey could be on the App Store, and they didn't have to offer the subscription through in-app purchases. But it's very sort of hacky and feels very sort of special case. It's almost as if I don't feel like Apple would have allowed this had this story not been as big as it was. Now what Hey does is that if you download the app for the first time on Hey and you don't already have a Hey account, then you get access to a 14-day temporary email. And essentially it's like a trial for Hey. So you get to use Hey for 14 days for free, and then it disappears after 14 days. Interestingly, that has meant that Hey.com has appeared on a bunch of lists for temporary email addresses that people should sort of validate that an email isn't submitted from one of those extensions because it's a disposable email, basically. I'm not sure what happened after that. I assume it got taken off because it is a bit ridiculous. Hey.com is a responsible company. But, it was interesting that the Apple putting in these demands actually made it so that Hey had even more problems. Like, Hey had other problems to deal with regarding arguing with people on GitHub repositories and things saying, hey.com is not a disposable email address. We only have to do this because Apple are making us do it. And people are like, but it's a temporary email for 14 days. Like, it's disposable. So I know it's not your fault, but the long and short of it is that we have to categorize it as people could abuse it and use it as a disposable email. Anyway. So that happened. That happened, and it sort of went away. It's quietened down. DHH actually announced I think on the 10th, he's taking 3 months off. So Hey's out there. Everything seems to be going great. Everyone really loves Hey, by the way. It's a sort of revolutionary new way for email, and I encourage you to check it out, because if you're struggling with email, you're struggling with newsletters and things like that, it's a really interesting new take on how to do an email client. So go and take a look at it. I have no affiliation with Basecamp or Hey or anything like that, by the way, other than the fact that I use Rails for some of my stuff, and that's open source and free to use and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, later on, very recently actually, Microsoft announced that XCloud would not be coming to iOS devices. This is part of their sort of ramp up towards September, when they will release Project XCloud to Game Pass owners for free, which is really, really cool. But one of the issues is iOS users can't use XCloud, and the reason why is because it violates App Store guidelines. There's a couple of reasons why. Basically, one, it's the same issue as before. So XCloud is, it's a game. You use it to play games. But it doesn't work. Nothing will work if you don't have a subscription. If you haven't paid Microsoft some money beforehand, it's not going to work. And so Apple doesn't like that. Apple essentially wants Microsoft to say, oh, okay, so if you just put in-app purchases here and let people buy 30 days of like xCloud game time or something like that, that'll be fine. We're sorted. However, they've actually doubled down on it now, and also said that one of the other issues is that because they are basically injecting sort of apps into the app itself, Apple can't review them. This is probably where a bit of background information is probably useful for sort of the App Store submission process. Apple, iOS, iPhone is a curated ecosystem. So whenever you want to put something onto the App Store, you have to submit it, and you have to give Apple a lot of information depending on the type of app it is. It's not just, you don't just submit the code and they check through the code. You have to explain to them what it is, take screenshots. In some cases, if it's sort of an account-based system, you have to give them an account with like no restrictions, so they can say, okay, I can log in, and this is what this screen looks like, and this is what this screen looks like, and this is for a bunch of different reasons. It's curated to make sure that it sort of meets the Apple ecosystem standards for UX, which is user experience, and it, as well as making sure that there's no sort of scams or sort of issues with what's going on in terms of the UX to make people believe that they might be clicking on something and putting the password in or anything like that. It's basically make sure that no one is taken advantage of, and it basically means it's part of the entire sort of, I'm struggling to formulate my words here, but basically what I'm trying to say is that it's part of Apple's sort of UX philosophy. Personally, I believe that there is some validity to that, in the fact that I like that they curate the apps that go on the App Store. I like that they make sure that the UX is good, and that I like that they make sure that the apps that are on there, they meet the same style. They are as user-friendly as possible, in my opinion. And for a less tech-savvy person, like your 50-year-old mum, or, just people who haven't been using smartphones for the majority of their lifetimes, I think iOS is the superior brand of at least of operating system. It's easier to use. Those tiny UX changes, on a superficial level, iOS and Android are very similar, but it's those tiny UX things. It's those tiny sort of considerations in how a user flows between process to process, between app to app, that makes iOS far more user friendly than Android does. And so I like that they go through this curation system. But one of the things that they strive to make sure is that every single piece of code, every single piece of app goes through this curation system. Now, Facebook tried to get through this ages ago with their introduction of React Native. So React Native was this idea that they could make something in React, which is a web framework that then transpiles. It's a web framework that's coded in JavaScript, so it's just a big blob of JavaScript, and then that transpiles through bridges, through sort of a base sort of app that has all those sort of transcoding libraries into stuff that can be displayed on an iOS phone or an Android phone, and the idea was that they wanted to be able to get around that App Store review process. They wanted to put an update out. They wanted to be able to make it so that their Facebook app could download a bit of JavaScript from Facebook and implement it straight into the app as like a silent install. And iOS, quite rightly, were like, no, you are not silent installing new features into your app, Facebook. This is not okay. And so they made sure that the App Store, that any apps that go onto it would, they would go through and make sure that it wasn't trying to pull code that could then be implemented and basically baked into the app and silent installed into it. And this is sort of a similar thing. So this XCloud gives, XCloud gives the App Store, XCloud gives Microsoft the ability to add games to the App Store, to the App Store, technically to the App Store, to XCloud whenever they want. They turn around. Tomorrow they say, oh, by the way, Shadow the Tomb Raiders on XCloud. Oh, by the way, on Friday we're gonna add what is it? I don't know, Call of Duty 70 or something onto XCloud. It's there. Warzone's on XCloud. Halo 70's on XCloud or something like that. But that would violate it in the same way. If they could just throw stuff onto there, Apple had no way of reviewing that. However, these things don't just happen willy-nilly. They don't just get new updates willy-nilly, but that's the same thing. So that's the same thing, is that they would have to keep track of so many sort of factors. They would have to keep track of, if they wanted to review everything, they would have to keep track of so many factors. Microsoft would have to say, okay, so by the way, Call of Duty, the new Halo, Tomb Raider, the new Battletoads, all this has been updated today to version 3.1. We're going to put out Bulletstorm on XCloud on Saturday. So if you can just review that for us, please. App Store, Apple isn't made of people that can review these apps, and so I think there is some rightness. I think there is some correctness in them saying we can't review everything. But you can come out and say this isn't just some. It's not just some bloke on the. It's not just some bloke on the side of the street trying to put an app onto App Store. It's not. It's not shovelware. This is Microsoft we're talking about. But Apple is obsessed with control, so they would never trust Microsoft to implement any sort of restrictions that meant that they met certain guidelines before it went onto XCloud and stuff like that. Stadia, similar thing. There's this all similar thing. I know I've talked about XCloud a lot. XCloud is what people are upset about because people actually are interested in XCloud, unlike Stadia. But it's interesting from the perspective. So this is yet another. The whole reason why I've talked about this is because this is yet another example of Apple basically making enemies for themselves. You know, XCloud is this innovative, revolutionary new software, and I'm using revolutionary and innovative on purpose, and I'll get onto why later. But my point being is that, you know, they are standing in the way of technology. They're standing in the way of people, of consumers, accessing the products that they want to access on the iPhone. I have an iPhone. Easy allies, by the way. I have an iPhone. They're stopping people from using the products they want to use on the devices that they own. I own this phone. This is my technology right here. And I'm not happy about it. A lot of other people aren't happy about it. And they have every right to be unhappy about it. You know, you look and you say, you look and you know, let's go back to our old friend DHH. And it's like, Apple wants to be able to review every game that graces an iPhone screen, even if it's streamed from a game server somewhere in the cloud. This line of reasoning connects directly to a future claim to drop iOS web browser. Can't review all websites. It's particularly ironic because Apple already did review all those awful microtransaction slot machine games that the App Store is packed full of. It's not like a walled garden is full of roses. It's full of weeds and thorns. Apple has already failed to be a curator in chief. And that is absolutely a fair argument. You go through the App Store and it's full of microtransactions, slot machine nonsense, that just wants to take your money through in-app purchases. For a lot of these apps that do use in-app purchases that are making Apple tons of money through that 30%, they're charging money for nothing. They don't have servers to worry about in terms of, so they do have some servers, but they're not running a business that's providing, quote, real value. It's entertainment for people at the end of the day. And so, they're, the person making the app, is raking over money hand over fist. They can put a spin on their app, give it a new coat of paint, and they can make a duplicate that basically is using the same service, using the same back-end servers even. And suddenly they're doubling, maybe tripling their money because they've just added another app that has an entire separate set of discoverability options. It's brand new on the App Store and people will love it. And it's just basically surprising that they're making this argument when we're talking about Microsoft. It is double standard. But and we'll see more of this later on, that Apple does have double standards. Apple will not lie through their teeth to defend themselves. They're obsessed with control. They're obsessed with making money. They're a $1 trillion company. They are the biggest technology company in existence. And it's insane how much market power they have. So, now we get on to the actual sort of news part, and we are 24 minutes into the video. That's great. So I'm going to try and be as brief as possible because I'm going to direct you to a couple of other places. But we're going to talk about it sort of as an overview as possible. So I was scrolling through YouTube and I found this video from Hoglaw, shout out. Basically, Epic declared war on Apple/Google with Fortnite. And basically, this was fascinating. This was fascinating for a bunch of different reasons. But basically, Epic decided to break Apple terms and conditions. I'm not sure if they broke Google terms and conditions. I've not read through those properly, but I am quite familiar with the Apple developer guidelines. And the issue, what they decided to do is they decided to, when you pay, so previously to, not yesterday, the day before, previously to then, when you bought VBucks, which are the microtransaction sort of virtual currency that Fortnite has, you had to use in-app purchases, and in-app purchase meant that Apple took a 30% cut. So a certain number of VBucks was $9.99, $10, about £8. Apple would take 30% of that, so about $3, maybe £2, and Epic would take the rest home. And the nice thing is, obviously, that, and Apple, did all the payment processing and all that kind of stuff for them. Epic just set that up and then they take the 70% home with them. But that is what they decided to do. Was they decided to do a couple of things. They announced that on their Twitter, they announced that they would be basically discounting VBucks permanently. So they were going to take them down by $2, by about 20%. So $9.99 became $7.99. £8 became maybe £6.50. And apart from one place, Apple decided to, well, not Apple, but Epic decided to make sure that on the iOS version of Fortnite, they had two options. They had, they had the sort of Apple in-app purchase option, and they also had their Epic Direct Pay version. And one said $9.99, the Apple one, and one said $7.99. And they made a big blog post about it, and they have all this marketing behind it that basically says that, on the iOS version, we have to pay 30% to Apple, so it's this price and this price. And so they saw that as a competitive choice, and they were saying, they were pointing out that Apple, took 30%, and they were saying, like, ultimately, we're not pointing you towards one option or the other. The only thing that you're going to make your decision off is the price. But no one's going to pay for the more expensive option. In fact, there is one case. There is one case which I think Luke from Linus Media Group, who was the COO of Floatplane, he pointed out that some people maybe are a bit more comfortable with giving their money to Apple, giving their card details to Apple, than they are to Epic. To someone who, to a mum who's just paying for stuff for their kid, they might be less sort of comfortable with putting their card details into the Fortnite app itself, instead of just pressing the in-app purchase button and letting the Apple account sort that out for them. So that is one. But for the most part, for regular people that are buying them for themselves, that knows who Epic is, that knows that they're a huge company that can be trusted, they know that they're going to pay for the cheaper option. Because $2 is huge. Very few people are going to pick that $9.99 option. Like I said, it's going to be the mum. It's going to be the person that just is very, very careful with their card details and things like that. That's a bit scared of technology. But it's, and so I watched through this video. I really enjoyed it. The red is back there because I've watched this video several times. But if I go down, and I was leaving comments, and I actually got 10 upvotes, which is kind of cool. But I was trying to figure out how they could get away with it, because to my knowledge they can't. And so I was confused, and so I was thinking that maybe they were sort of relying on that multi-platform services part of the App Store review guidelines. And if we go to the review guidelines, we can find it right here. And so the multi-platform services guidelines basically says apps that operate across multiple platforms may allow users to access content, subscriptions, or features that they have acquired in your app on other platforms or your website, including consumable items in multi-platform games, provided those items are also available as in-app purchases within the app. You must not directly or indirectly target iOS users to use a purchasing method other than the in-app purchase, and your general communications about other purchasing methods must not discourage the use of in-app purchase. So I thought they were trying to get away with that by using this. So this is common. And again, I recently watched the one show where Luke from Linus Media Group, who again is the COO of Floatplane, they've had issues with iOS, and they were saying, we have issues because we can't just charge 30% more on iOS, on the iOS app, compared to other places. And I'm not sure how true that is, because Gwent, I found this out yesterday. Gwent, which is the Witcher card game, it's made by CD Projekt Red, who are one of the most consumer-friendly companies in the gaming industry that I know. And also, Hearthstone, which is Activision Blizzard, who is one of the least consumer-friendly companies in the gaming industry that I know. They both charge more on iOS compared to on the web apps, on the PC apps, on GOG, on all that kind of things. I think they're kegs on Gwent, and I'm not sure. I think they're just card packs on Hearthstone. But everything costs more on iOS. So not only are they allowed to have this sort of single system where someone can buy kegs or Hearthstone packs or anything on the web, on the desktop client, on anything, and have that virtual currency, have that sort of content that they unlocked through that purchase on the desktop client. They're allowed to have that content carry over to this app that lives inside the iOS ecosystem. As long as, if you're on the iOS ecosystem, you do not push the user towards that. You do not push the user towards that desktop client, that web client that lets them do it, and also that in their general communications, they do not push people towards not using the iOS in-app purchases. And you can see that this is a bit of a spoiler, but I'm going to just do this anyway, because it's still the actual press release is still the pinned tweet on the Fortnite Twitter, which I find quite funny, to be honest with you. But it's Fortnite Mega Drop permanent discounts. This is what it looks like. You can see it's $9.99, $7.99. Epic Direct, we're adding a new way to pay on iOS and Android Epic Direct Payment. When you choose to use Epic Direct Payments, you save up to 20% as Epic passes along payment processing savings to you. Grab the latest Fortnite Epic to begin saving today. Here's how it works. So that's interesting, because in the app, arguably, they're saying that they're not. This is why I'm second guessing even myself. Are they pushing people towards this Epic Direct Payment? Arguably they are, because of the price. I hadn't realised the discount price bit was there, but there's no special sort of highlighting of the Epic Direct Payment. And again, we'll come to this later on when we talk about some of the special deals that Apple has. But they're trying as best they can while still trying to sort of sneakily say, if you pay us direct, you get a discount. But without highlighting it, they put their option at the top. It's the top option, and they want people to click on. They obviously want people to click on the bottom one, but they're not pushing people towards it, other than saying it's discount, other than saying they can save money using it, all that kind of stuff. And they go through and they talk about sales tax and VAT and things like that. They talk about the Fortnite on Android and things like that. Or if I recently purchased free VBucks, I liked this one. That you get more VBucks back if you'd purchased them in the last 30 days, which was fun. They applied to save the world and stuff like that. So I thought that maybe so back to the thing though. I thought 3.1.3b multi-platform services. I thought this could possibly cover them. It wouldn't make a difference. It would not make a difference, because these guidelines are just guidelines. They're just sort of it's like an FAQ of how to get through the Apple Review Store policy, how to get through that process. Apple will change these to whatever they want them to be, just to make sure that they meet their standards. It's why reader apps became a thing. They added in this little, this little sort of subcategory of apps to make sure that they could have an example and say, well, Netflix is allowed because it's a reader app, but also because about 50 million of our customers said, why can't I get Netflix on my iOS phone? But I was going through that, trying to figure out what's going on, how they can't possibly have done this without being confident that they couldn't get taken off the App Store. They shouldn't technically have been able to get this feature into their app through the app review process until without approval from Apple. So I thought, well, Apple must have approved it, so let's look for the sort of the reasons why in the guidelines. Maybe they sorted out a special deal or something like that. But oh wow, 35 minutes. I'm not being brief at all. I'm just going to keep this as a long video because I'm 35 minutes in now. But anyway, I thought they must have gone through it. The review process is usually quicker after that first review, especially if when the their sort of automated process for checking through the IPA, which is the sort of code that the app lives in that you submit off to the App Store. If that's not changed barely at all, then they probably categorize it in, this is probably fine, it's just bug fixes, stuff like that. Maybe if it's your first couple of reviews, they might take a little bit more of a look. But generally things get through a little bit faster. Turns out no. Turns out that Fortnite is currently unavailable on Google Play. This was the thing, and then this dropped. Basically, what happened was Apple just took Fortnite off the App Store, which meant that anyone that owned Fortnite that tried to update Fortnite on iOS would get it taken off. New players could not find Fortnite on the App Store, and within about 3 minutes, all this stuff dropped. Epic Games has defied the App Store monopoly. In retaliation, Apple is blocking Fortnite from 1 billion devices. Visit fn.gg/freefortnite and join the fight to stop 2020 from becoming 1984. This video, which is a CG trailer that was unlocked within... this CG trailer that was unlocked within Fortnite, you could watch it within Fortnite. It's a parody of the 1984 advert that Apple released when they released the Macintosh in 1984. Because back then IBM were this sort of technology like mega giant. IBM have since gone away from sort of consumer electronics and they're much more into the sort of enterprise hardware side of things, but back then, IBM was huge and they had an arguable monopoly over the technology industry in terms of compute and things like that. And so they're parodying them, saying that back then you strived for this sort of open market. You believed that Apple deserved a foothold in the compute industry, and that you have all that, you have all this, and so they're basically calling out Apple and saying, you are hypocrites. You once were this thing, and now you're just not anymore. You are not that person. This streamed for ages, like hours and hours. This is a stream. I didn't even realize that. 18-hour stream. Okay, so they streamed this on Twitter for 18 hours to make sure that people saw it. Building stronger. Okay, that's just outfit. And then basically they tweeted and said, Epic Games has filed legal papers in response to Apple. Read more here. And you can find the legal papers here. And they basically have put in a antitrust complaint. They've filed it, basically saying that Apple has a monopoly on iOS devices. They are unfairly using their monopoly to stop competition, to stop innovation. And that is a violation of what I understand in America is called the Sherman Act, which is their antitrust stuff, and it's the pillar of their antitrust laws in America. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about this. If you want to talk to a lawyer, I'd go and check out Hogue Law's video on the whole thing. He's a gamer, and he's very well versed in sort of that, Epic Games and everything like that, he understands the thing, but you'll also go and explain, the background of this document that's like 65 pages long, and explain to you like what the facts are in terms of what the law says, and then go through how Epic believes that law applies to this lawsuit and how they believe it. Now, I don't want to steal his content, but I will sort of summarizing it in saying that, in my understanding, the main part of Epic's case against Apple is that Epic believes that the iOS, this phone right here, that I still have set to the normal screen with the nice beach and the waves and the water. They believe this is an antitrust market. They believe that anyone should be able to put or basically sell things on this device and have it be able to not sort of squash down. It should be able to compete fairly with anything else that's available on this device. And that's currently not the case. So what happened, it's a walled garden, it's curated. Apple approves everything. And so they're arguing that Apple curate it, their walled garden serves mainly to make sure that in iOS devices, Apple stays on top. That they are always getting money from anything that gets sold on here. They're making it so that people can't innovate, that people can't make revolutionary new applications, going back to that XCloud thing before. Many people called out with the XCloud thing, Apple has Apple Arcade. They have their own subscription service already. They don't want people going, but Game Pass is really good value and I can play it on iOS, so I'm just going to buy that with all these great new console quality games rather than paying for Apple Arcade, which ultimately are just mobile games, which I don't need to explain to anyone. I think that they are, never going to be as good quality as a console game in terms of fidelity, in terms of complexity and things like that. Of course, you can get some good mobile games, but they're few and far between. But they believe that they should be able to sell on this. And I sort of agree and disagree. I agree that Apple stifles innovation. Again, my personal bias is I have a personal interest in the App Store developer guidelines becoming less strict, because it would allow the company that I work for to probably make more money. So I'm just going to tell you that right now. I have a vested interest in Epic winning this case in some way or another. But I do think they stop innovation. I think XCloud is innovation. I think XCloud is a prime example of innovation being stopped by this anti-competitiveness. I think that web apps that have companion apps like Hey.com are so unfairly stopped and bullied by Apple's developer guidelines. Because the thing about web apps is when we design web apps, the value is in the web app. More often than not, the person that we are designing the app for, the web app for, is going to be using the web app. More often than not, the phone app, the iOS app, the Android app, whatever app we want to talk about, it's a companion. It's not meant to be the sort of where the value is. So if I want to make to use an example, the company I work for, Yozu, we work on something called Pandal. And Pandal is it's an accounting piece of software, and it's all based on the web. And it's basically there's a free version, there's a pro version. The pro version costs, I think, £5 a month or something like that. And you get a bunch of extra features. But on the iOS app, we can only give you the free features. You can't access the paid for features on the iOS app. You only do the base stuff, because Apple says we can only do the base stuff, which sucks. It's rubbish, because no accountant on the planet, no person that knows anything about money, that knows anything about running a business, going to go, you know what is the best place for me to crunch my numbers and to put in my profits and my revenue and my costs? It's on a flipping smartphone. It doesn't happen. We talk about the fact that more people use the web through a mobile device than through any other kind of device in 2020. For the past 5 years, 80% of people own a smartphone. It is by far where the most web browsing happens across all devices. Many people own smartphones, and they don't own personal computers. But the people that we are selling our apps to are not those people. We have a target audience. And Apple should be able to sort of identify that and agree and say that, if this was just a mobile app, then obviously, if Pandal just was on the phone, then fine, absolutely fine. If Apple is, if Pandal is just on the phone, then that's absolutely fine. We should use in-app purchases to unlock content within the application. But that's not what we do. We're a web app. We want to be able to use the phone to do things like taking pictures of receipts, and so that people can easily track their costings and just checking, I've made, currently I reckon I've made this much profit this month. They're not doing it to do the big ticket features. They're not doing it to calculate the VAT returns and things like that. It's stupid. It's just dumb. But at the same time, I'm still like, but I like the walled garden. I like the fact that we're curate. I like the UX side of it. So it's weird because I feel guilty that I'm asking Apple to do something for nothing. But in some ways I'm not. Like, a lot of people have compared the 30% on. Well, let's talk about it. So 30%, they take a 30% cut, right? This is a standard cut, right? So on other marketplaces, especially where gaming is concerned, you look at Steam, you look at Microsoft, you look at Sony's PlayStation Store, Microsoft's Xbox Live Marketplace, Nintendo's eShop, Steam. They all take a 30% cut. You can't look at the App Store and say, oh my god, 30% is outrageous. You can't believe taking 30%, because everyone takes 30%. It's the standard. But there is a difference between this phone and a console, and there's two reasons, and it goes back to a point I made earlier. So the first difference is that this is marked up. This phone is marked up by a ludicrous amount. Absolutely insane how much this is marked up. If you took away all the other money that if you took away all the other money that that Apple make and just looked at phone sales, they would still be making a hefty profit. People like say, in 2018, Apple spent, what was it, 16 million or 16 billion in, it might have been 16 billion probably, but they said, they spent 16 billion R&D for the iPhone. So they should be able to, charge all this money off, like iPhone profit, off revenue from iPhone sales. In 2019, I think they made 26 billion in like a single quarter. Like, they make that money back hand over fist through this. With Sony, Steam is the only place Steam make money for a start. Steam only make money through that. They're a marketplace. That's their business model. And what's more is that, that business model exists on a PC. And PC, Windows, thanks to that 2000 thing with Internet Explorer and Microsoft and that issue way back then, Microsoft Windows is very open. And you don't need to go through any special channels to get something installed on a Windows PC. I could open a website right now, code a little exe, and have something installed on your computer that said hi every time you logged into the computer or something like that. I could do that now. There's no gatekeeper stopping me from being able to access that PC market, and so Steam isn't blocking anyone else from accessing that market. They're offering a service in exchange for 30% of revenue. Now, with Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft, their stuff is only available on the console, and so you might look at that and say, well, isn't that just the same thing? It's a walled garden. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree with Hogue. He talks about it in this video, and he talks about it in another video that again I'll just mention a bit later. And he mentions it. He says that the arguments that Epic is making against Apple do count against Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo too. They are the walled garden. They're very, very similar, but there are key differences. So one of them is sort of the I'm not compassionate, but maybe ethical or moral reason why Tim Sweeney and Epic isn't targeting Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo is because the console manufacturers take a loss or take nearly a loss on every single console that they sell. They sell very capable hardware that they've probably sunk a lot of research and development into, and not even counting the research and development costs, just on the hardware costs alone, they sell it for near cost. I think one of the best examples is when the PS4 first released, the hardware cost for the PS4 when it released was $380, and they sold it for $400. So they got $20 for each console sold on, and that's it. So not counting R&D, which probably millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's not a lot. So their business model, the console business model, is to make that money back on software. They license the hardware out to developers and to publishers to say, okay, right. So by the way, we've released this. Basically a computer, a console. We've released this and lots of people are interested in it. We reckon we're going to get an install base of around 100,000 units at launch, and we're aiming to get 1 million units out by the end of the year, by Christmas. Here, have a dev unit and make us, and if you want to put someone on, make a game, and then we're going to take 30% of that sale. And that's how they make their money. And that's the only way they make their money. They don't make their money through anything else. Obviously, Microsoft makes money through Microsoft, but the Xbox unit, that's how they make their money. Sony makes its money through TVs and all that kind of stuff, but PlayStation, that's how they make their money. Nintendo is just Nintendo, I guess. And then the other reason, and I think this has a bit more credit to it, I think this has a bit more clout, is that 80% of people on a smartphone. And I often talk about how there's one of those things, there's one of those questions that people give to, that people say, is like, people say, oh, if you could take anyone from history, if you have dinner with anyone alive or dead in all of history, who would it be and why? One of those kind of questions. And another one is, if you could say anything to someone who was alive 100 years ago or 200 years ago, whatever, what would it be? And my answer is always the same, is that in 100 years' time, people will be walking around with all of human knowledge in the palm of their hand. This device is so central to people's lives now. It's a utility. And that's a sort of key word. And, Epic do talk about it in here. And I can't be bothered going through it. Let's maybe do a search for utility. No. Yeah, I'm not going to find it. But they do make that argument that, people smartphones are a key part of people's lives. In the same way, and it's the same argument that was made with the Microsoft and Internet Explorer and Netscape stuff that happened back in sort of 2000. Personal computers have become more of a utility, and so the argument is that this sort of stops being a product and starts being an essential part of people's daily lives, in the same way that a car is, in the same way that a home is, in the same way that having a... I'm rubbish at this kind of thing, but trying to think of requirements for things. But you look at a car manufacturer, they can't, once you've sold that car to someone, apart from it being completely unenforceable, let's be honest. But there's no argument to say that a car manufacturer can turn around and say, you can't do that to that car. You want to have a turbo added to your Vauxhall Corsa. They can't, Vauxhall can't turn around and say, you can't do that. You have to buy a turbo off us. And they can't do that because you own that car. It's your car. It's your utility. It's your machine. You own every single piece of that car. It doesn't matter that Vauxhall bought it, whether you bought it off Vauxhall. You own it. Vauxhall provided that service, and that's it. And so Epic's argument, I feel, is the same. Epic is saying, and I think my argument is the same as well, is that, Apple don't need to be taking this 30%. They don't need to be having these stringent review guidelines in order to be making money off these. I've bought this device. This device is mine. I can do whatever I want with it. I also, Apple is completely within their right to say things like, we can't, like jailbreaking. So jailbreaking is obviously a thing which allows you to do a lot of the stuff that Apple doesn't let you do. And Apple is completely within their right to say, well, okay, but we can now refuse to give you any of our services that we might have given you otherwise. Like, with any iPhone, as long as it's an iPhone, you can walk into an Apple shop and say, my screen's broken, can you fix it for me? My battery's dead, it's broken, can you fix it for me? And they'll fix it for you either through warranty, through Apple Care, or through just a fixed price. And they're within their right to do that. But if I choose to forego those rights, I should be able to do whatever I want with this device, and I can't, because Apple owns the ecosystem inside it. And you can say that, Apple, has the right to iOS. They make iOS, they maintain iOS. Apple makes sure that the iOS and future versions of iOS are compatible with this phone. It's sort of one of the Wild West things of Android that people often talk about. You buy a new Samsung phone, and it stops getting updates within about 2 years because Samsung aren't bothering to put things on Samsung aren't bothering to put their flavor of Android and make sure that it's compatible with the phone that released 2 years ago, because that's not where they're making their money. They're making their money off the new sales of the new Samsung phones that they're releasing. So Apple is providing a lot for us, but it's still my device, and I still should be able to put on whatever I want, and I should be able to forego those rights. I should be able to say, well, I want to do whatever I want with this. Stop giving me updates. If I need a new phone, I'll just go and buy a new phone. If I need a phone that works with the latest version of iOS, I'll go and buy a new iPhone. That money is nothing to me personally. I know that stinks of sort of privilege and elitism and sort of things, but I'm my own person. I have my right to do that. It's very complicated, I think, and I think Apple is within their right to control iOS based on the services that they provide, based on the work that they do. But it's interesting. It's this is my device. I keep saying this is mine. This is my thing, and I should be able to put whatever I want on it, but I can't. I can make something that I can put on it. It's fairly easy to install hardware onto something that's unsigned if you know how to make something, but it's very illegal to distribute it. Not illegal, but against iOS terms and stuff like that. It's very difficult. Anyway, I realised I've rambled for a bit now, but that's sort of my view on the whole Epic thing. I realise I'm sweating now. It's really warm. It's sweltering. I'm really sorry. But let's go on and say, like I said, if you're interested in it at all, I recommend looking through this. I realise there's another 50-minute video, but he really goes into sort of lore side of it and how he thinks Epic will perform against Apple and what needs to happen and what the theory of the case is, which is again how Epic sort of interpret the law and how it applies to this situation and why they believe that they are due some injunctive relief. But then here's they also decided to sue Google, and this one's a bit more interesting. I'm not going to go into it much apart from because I'm not as sort of passionate about the Google side, but I do think it's interesting that again Hogue made a whole video. Again, he goes through Epic's theory of the case and why it applies to Google. They did the exact same thing with Google, by the way, increasing the price, going around the Google Play Store payment system and things like that. Google took Fortnite off the Google Play Store, and then they've decided to do this lawsuit. But you can tell that their main sort of target is Apple, in terms of obviously all the marketing that that's on here. They're targeting Apple, definitely. They probably knew that Apple would take them off, and maybe probably weren't as sure if Google was going to do it or not. Apparently they did. Apparently Google just followed suit in what Apple was doing. But yeah, they did another thing. Funny thing, by the way, the actual document is called Project Liberty. Oh, you can't see it because it's off the screen. If you actually find the link, if you go here, you go to this Epic suing Fortnite over Fortnite's removal from the Google Play Store. It's on The Verge, this article. First line has a link to it, has a link to a document, and the word document, I kid you not, is called Project Liberty, which is so hilariously pretentious. I cannot even. I can't. It's hilarious. But anyway, they go through and they talk about it. And again, Hogue made a video. He explains it. He goes through it. And explains it. But again, I'm just gonna say that the difference here is that their main problem, as from my understanding, is the way Google interferes in OEMs. So OEMs are people like Samsung, like OnePlus, like Huawei, who are making sort of their own hardware. They're putting together their own hardware, their own phone, and they're licensing Android off Google, putting it on their phone. And they talk about a couple of instances of things they had lined up. I think it's 16. Yeah, so they talk about how Google got in the way of a deal Epic had lined up with OnePlus. And so Article 16, Paragraph 16, whatever you want to call it. Epic's experience with OEM OnePlus is illustrative. Epic struck a deal with OnePlus to make Epic Games available on its phones through an Epic Games app. The Epic Games app would have allowed users to seamlessly install and update Epic Games, including Fortnite, without obstacles imposed by Google's Android OS. But Google forced OnePlus to renege on the deal, citing Google's particular concern about Epic having the ability to install and update mobile games while bypassing the Google Play Store. So basically what they're saying is that Google said to OnePlus, Google forced OnePlus to renege on the deal, but Google's concerns were basically they didn't want. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Google said that they were worried that this Epic Games app would be able to silently install updates or applications to someone's phone. And this is all to do with branding and things like that. Because ultimately, when you start an Android phone, obviously it's an Apple phone, but if you start an Android phone, there is Android branding, there is Android marketing. When you're going to the shop, you're buying an Android phone. You're buying a Samsung Galaxy S21 that runs Android. and so they were worried that this would compromise their user experience that they want Android to provide to people. It's very similar as the situation with iOS, but the key thing here, and Hogue points it out again, go watch his video. It's really good. It's called Round 2, A Lawyer Reacts to Epic's Google Lawsuit. It's Virtual Legality, episode 287. It's Google here is a third party. They are, Epic's trying to make a deal with OnePlus OEM, and OnePlus really should be able to do within an extent, whatever they want to do. And, the example is with Samsung. Samsung have the Samsung Android store. I think it's the Samsung App Store or something like that they put on all their phones. So OnePlus technically should be able to do that. OnePlus should be able to put whatever app store they want to do that on. But Google's getting in the way. Google's forcing OnePlus to get away with it, because Google can just turn around and say, if you don't do this, we won't license Android to you. You can't put Android on your phone. And OnePlus can't make that choice. OnePlus can't go away and make a new operating system and put it on their phone. And obviously I say I can't practically. Literally they can. Literally, they can go away, they can make their own operating system, they can put it on the OnePlus device, they can put it out into the market and see how it does. But two things: making an operating system is very, very expensive and requires a lot of design work, user experience work, just general programming. It's very low level. You have to make sure it works on the hardware that you're making. And then two, it just wouldn't sell, because you're either an Apple or an Android. You're not, not between. Windows Phone tried to do something and they failed spectacularly. I think the only other good example is what they called, security company. They were really popular. Oh my god, BlackBerry. BlackBerry obviously also had their own, and they were very popular in like 2009. Because they were focused on security. All the celebrities had BlackBerry phones because they were secure. But BlackBerry just stopped being trendy after a while. And what was trendy was iPhone, and then eventually Android. iPhone obviously being still the trendier one. But BlackBerry pivoted, and now BlackBerry is still a thing. But they license Android off of Google. And put it on their BlackBerry phones, but their flavor of Android is focused on security still. It's focused on being a secure experience, and I would not be surprised if quite a lot of businessy guys, that kind of thing, the people that the upper echelons, I won't be surprised if they're using BlackBerry phones. I chatted with the CTO of BlackBerry a few years ago, and it was really interesting. Talking about like the ways that you can sort of not jailbreak, but sort of reverse engineer Android apps and things like that, and sort of the security issues in the app experience nowadays. It was dead interesting. But yeah, my point being though is that it wasn't a choice for OnePlus to go and make a different thing. So Google said, we're not going to give you a license if you try and do this. And so OnePlus turned around and said, sorry, Epic, we can't do it. And they talk about LG as well. And they talk about how LG made them do this thing. And Google stifles blocks users' consumers' ability to download app stores and app directly from developers' websites, as anyone who has tried to download directly on an Android device knows it is significantly different than the simple process available on a personal computer. Directly downloading Fortnite on an Android device can involve a dozen steps, requiring a user to change default settings and bravely click through multiple dire warnings. And even if a persistent user manages to install a competing app store, Google prevents such stores from competing on equal footing with the Google Play Store by blocking them from the offering basic functions, such as automatic updating of apps in the background, which is available for apps downloaded from the Google Play Store. I think this is ridiculous, honestly. I think it's stupid. I think Epic knows that they're being ridiculous. Because Well, it's again, it is twofold. It is twofold, right? So if you go on Windows, right, and typically Windows is okay with you downloading installers and things from websites as long as they're signed. If something is unsigned or it's signed with something that they are not familiar with, that Windows doesn't know about. So, for example, Windows knows what Google is. So when you install when you get the Chrome installer and put it on your PC, you're probably going to get maybe one warning, and that warning is going to be probably something to do with your settings on your computer, to do with security, that says always warn me whenever something tries to install itself to my computer. But other than that, it's not going to show anything. But Windows will always tell you if something is unsigned, or it's something they're not familiar with, or even it might even be that it registers something Windows Defender that says this looks like a Trojan, or this looks like malware. You probably shouldn't install this. And so it's the same thing on Android, right? So Android is, you can side load apps on, but that side loading, it needs to be defended against, right? Because ultimately, Google has no interest in agreeing and saying, oh yeah, people who aren't tech savvy shouldn't get an Android. They're never going to say that. They want everyone to buy an Android phone because they make more money the more people own Android phones. I think 75% of the market's Android. And that ranges from people who are buying the latest Samsungs down to the 60-year-old guy who's getting his first smartphone, just wants a cheap Android phone for 60 quid from Argos. And so it's just like they have to put those warnings there. It's reasonable. It's reasonable to have those warnings there. So what you can argue, and what Epic should be arguing here, is that Google should be implementing a system similar to Windows, in that you can sign your APK, and APK can be signed, and it almost always has to be signed. But it can be signed and just put up for download, and when you try and download it, Android would say, I know who this is because they've told me. I've done, and I'm Android, I'm Mr. Android, I'm made by Mr. Google, and Mr. Epic has told Mr. Google that I've made an app for download, and this is my sign-in key. And then when I put it on, and so I've told Android, if you see this sign-in key, this is Epic. And they're okay. They can be installed on no problem. We don't need to show any warnings because they're okay. But that's just, and that's fine. But you can't have it all. They're not giving that detail. They're not giving that ground. They're just saying outright, I shouldn't have to do this. This is unfair. I shouldn't have to go through. And they don't want to set any goalposts too early, I guess. I do think the stuff about Google Play Store blocking them from offer basic functions such as automatic updating of apps in the background, which is available for apps downloaded from the Google Play Store. It should not take a software engineer or a genius. It shouldn't take a genius to sort of work out why you don't necessarily want apps being able to update themselves automatically. Any app being able to update itself automatically, should I say. Again, some apps perhaps should be able to update themselves automatically because they're trusted. But a lot of apps can't be, and it shouldn't be the default setting. It should be a privilege given to certain apps that have an agreement with Google, with the OEM, something like that. So I've now been talking for an hour and 15 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up now with just one other thing. If we look at the article, I think there's an Apple quote here somewhere. Oh, wait, this is the Google one. I'm just going to Google for the Apple. I realize this is sues Apple. I'm trying to find the quote, the response from Apple. Wait, it might be here in the Google in the BBC News thing. What does Apple say? All right, here we go. So Apple did make a response very recently and said in a statement, Apple said that Epic has had apps on the App Store for a decade and has benefited from the Apple's App Store ecosystem, including its tools, testing, and distribution that Apple provides to all its developers. Epic agreed to the App Store terms and guidelines freely, and we're glad that they've built such a successful business on the App Store. They've not. Again, this is them fighting back. It's one of those things that I sort of hate Apple for, is that they believe that they are the golden flipping goose. Epic are not successful because of the App Store. That's not where the value is. They're using your service and they've gotten probably a lot of money for it, but arguably it's not successful because it's on the App Store. It's successful because it's a good freaking game and it's on a lot of other stuff as well. But anyway, the fact that their business interests now lead them to push for a special arrangement does not change the fact that these guidelines create a level playing field for all developers and make the store safe for all users. We will make every effort to work with Epic to resolve these violations so that they can return Fortnite to the App Store. So, this is the thing that I found out. I sort of put two and two together last night. Basically, well, let's do two things, and it's around this special arrangement. A special arrangement. They're saying that Epic wants a special arrangement. Now, I've been saying this to a lot of people, and people can call me naive and all sorts, but Tim Sweeney has been very sort of involved in the discourse, and let's be absolutely fair that the change in these policies mean a difference. Mean an increased profit of millions of dollars for Tim Sweeney, for the rest of his sort of executives, for Epic as a whole. I'm not naive of that fact. However, I do believe that in some way he thinks that these changes will make the industry as a whole better. It'll make my life better. It'll mean that I'm more able to sort of think of more innovative, more revolutionary features, more better app ideas that I can go to my managing director. I can say, I've had this idea. I think it's got some legs. Let me throw something together. And we don't have to worry so much about, well, is it going to pass the App Store terms and conditions? And anyway, and so I believe that, and so when Epic says they're not looking for a special arrangement, they're not looking for damages, they're not looking for financial compensation, they want an injunction to stop Epic from making these decisions for everyone. I believe in that. I believe that is what they want. I'm not sure they're going to get it, to be honest with you. Spoilers. I just don't think it's going to. I think that the judge is going to turn around and go, Apple made this, they can do what they want with it. But I do think that it's within the interest of consumers, of developers, of everyone, that this becomes a more open platform. Because if it's made a more open platform, if Android is made a more open platform, you're going to get more innovation. By making it more open, it means you're going to, people are going to get taken advantage of more, there's a downside to it. But in my opinion, I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. I think if we can make more people technology literate, computer literate, I think we'll see the benefits of that. We shouldn't really be relying on technology to make sure that people aren't taken advantage of. We should be teaching people how to not be taken advantage in the same way that, when I was a kid, we got taught not to talk to strangers. We should teach kids from a young age how to interact with computers, how to interact with their smartphones. If they go on a chat room, don't just install something that someone says they can install. They go on a website that says free VBucks. It's probably not true. It's probably too good to be true. That's the way we get around that kind of thing. And so I believe in that. Now, one of the things that they do point out in one of the things that Epic does point out in Apple's thing, and I think I can find it. Amazon. Yeah, so they talk about it a lot. By contrast, app developers who sell physical products have multiple ways to process transactions, and consumers are more willing to use methods other than in-app purchases. For example, a consumer that desires to purchase a physical product from Amazon could readily use either Amazon's mobile app or Amazon's website, or could make the same or similar purchase in a number of other ways, including through another online seller or at a brick-and-mortar store. Now, I think somewhere else it actually lists them out. Here we go. Let me find it. Let me just check. I swear I saw a different list, but I will just read that one out because I think it goes over what I'm talking about. So it's paragraph 136, and it says, there is no security justification for requiring the use of in-app purchase for a user's in-app purchase of in-app content. The best illustration of this point is Apple's own conduct. Apple does not require that its in-app purchase be used for in-app purchases of physical goods and services that are consumed outside the app. There is no security-based distinction between purchases of such physical goods, e.g. food and clothing, and services like rideshare and lodging on the one hand, and purchases of in-app content, e.g. game content, unlocks, and charismatic cosmetics on the other. Apple permits app developers like Amazon, Uber, and Airbnb to process payments from customers for the goods and services they sell. It can likewise permit Epic, Match, Pandora, and others to process payments from customers for the digital goods and services they sell. So what they're saying here is that you let Amazon and Airbnb and whatever, you let them use Apple Pay, which is different from in-app purchases. I've seen that mistake made a few times. Apple Pay and in-app purchase are not the same thing. Apple Pay is used like a card. It is essentially a credit card that is just managed through your phone. It is not in-app purchase. It does not get a 30% cut given to Apple. Let's carry on. But they're saying that there's no reason, there's no security reason. And again, they're using their thing quite funnily. But they're saying that basically there's no security justification. Why? And I have no idea what the justification is, but it's true. It's absolutely true. And you can find it here. It's 3.1.5a of the review guidelines. It's goods and services outside of the app. If your app enables people to purchase goods or services that will be consumed outside of the app, you must use purchase methods other than in-app purchase to collect those payments, such as Apple Pay or traditional credit card entry. Now, I think this is interesting for a few different reasons. So, first of all, note the language, right? At no point does Epic point out in this paragraph that it's not only that they have the choice, it's that they must. They must not use in-app purchase. Now, use a bit of common sense here, right? Apple get 30% cut of all in-app purchases, right? Apple get a 30% cut. So there is no interest for Apple. There's no monetary interest in Apple turning around and saying you're not allowed to use in-app purchase for this, unless there's got a good reason, unless it's within their business interest or within rules that they have to abide by to say, you can't use in-app purchase. We can't take 30% off. Now, in my opinion, I think the reason, I don't know the reason. Again, just look, in my opinion, the reason is probably something to do with like taxing laws and things like that. It's going to be something to do with the fact that Apple don't know where that money is coming from, what that money is being paid for. So if it's paying for food, they need to know what kind of food or clothing. They need to know whether it's kids' clothes or adult clothes, because in the UK you can't tax kids' clothes. Kids' clothes can't be taxed, but adult clothes can. So it makes Apple's job, and it makes the function of in-app purchase a lot more complicated, because suddenly in-app purchase needs to know the tax laws for every single country and every single region in America, or each state is taxed differently and things like that. It needs to know all these things. It needs to know where in the country, or what country the user was in at the time, at what point, which if they're in multiple countries, if they're traveling between, what tax laws applies. It makes that whole thing so complicated. So they just give the sort of they just give up that money, because they don't want to have to worry about it. They don't have to say, well, we made 30% off that, and Amazon have told us that was for kids' clothes, so we can't take anything. But actually, that 30% was a payment for a child's jumper and an adult jumper. So we need to figure out the percentage of the 30% that represents the child's jumper, and the 30% of the percentage of the 30% that was the adult's jumper, and then we need to take the tax that we can apply to the tax that was applied to the child's jumper, the adult jumper, because of the law, because they were in the UK, and so it's 10%, or I don't know. VAT is changing so much, but then we need to figure out how much of that is VAT, so then we can add it to our VAT thing and send it off to the government. That's hard. That's really hard. That is a ludicrously complicated issue. That Apple don't want to deal with. And Epic probably know this. Epic probably, they're Epic. They're a huge government. Not a huge government, they're a huge corporation. They probably know why Apple don't let you use in-app purchases. They have lawyers. A lawyer, you sit there, you get a lawyer, you get a chief technology officer, and you put them in a room, and they talk for 2 hours about, why, they go over and they look over the review guide and they say, look at this 3.1.5a. Chief technology officer, why do you think that is? What do we have to worry about? And then they go, we have to. So obviously that means that anything that's like clothes or anything like that, or food, or an Uber ride or anything like that, we can't put that through in-app purchase, which means Apple can't take the 30%. Why might they not want to take the 30%, Mr. Lawyer? And the lawyer goes, well, it might be something to do with the taxes or something to do with that. And it might be too complicated an issue for them to deal with, so they cannot do it. And I just find it interesting that they've completely skirted that by saying, there's no security justification. There's no security reason why we have to use in-app content, because Amazon don't have to do it, because they know that it's not going to be a security reason why that's the case. and they know, and they're specifically not calling out the fact that it's not just a choice. It's not just permits. It requires. This sentence should read: Apple requires app developers like Amazon, Uber, and Airbnb to process payments from customers for the goods and services they sell. Requires. It shouldn't say permits. But they have worded this as a bullet to say, as a piece of ammo to say, you should look at this, Judge. I'm using Hoag's Law's mannerisms because I've watched his content so much over the past couple of days. They're going to say, Judge, these people are getting special treatment. Why can't we get special treatment? That's not the case. However, I had a conversation, and I don't know if I'm allowed to show this or not. I'm not gonna play the video. The Easy Allies. Cool podcast. I'm going to find their YouTube video for their recent podcast, which is currently on early access. But I've had a little bit of a conversation with someone in the comments. I don't know if anyone's actually replied to me. I haven't checked recently. Not going to play it. Here I explained, because one of the panelists in the Easy Allies podcast, Daniel Bloodworth, was saying, I don't understand why Amazon and Uber and Grubhub, they're allowed to do their own thing. And so I explained that it comes under 3.1.5. It's not a thing that you consume within the application, and that's part of the rules. It's not even, it's not that they're permitted, it's they're allowed. And I said I had no clue why this exception is being made. I imagine it's something complicated to do with the taxing of goods and services, with no real simple answer. An IVO show who I know from a couple of places, from forums and stuff like that, he says you can buy digital goods as well from Amazon, such as movies and books. And I replied and I said, absolutely, you can't use the Amazon app to consume those goods though. You have to use a separate reader app to consume that content on iOS devices in order to watch your digital videos. Amazon directs you to the Amazon Prime Video in order to read your ebooks, and Amazon directs you to Kindle. In order to watch your digital videos, Amazon directs you to Amazon Prime Video. In order to read your ebooks, Amazon directs you to Kindle. And so that is true. That is true. So if you go on Amazon, I have Amazon on my phone, and I can go through it right now. So I go on Amazon. I'm not going to do it on Kindle because it's difficult. But I was out of interest. I decided to have a look. And basically, if you go on your Amazon app and I search for Mission Impossible, and I press watch trailer, or if I try, I can't buy it on here, which is hilarious. But what they've done, this is amazing. This is amazing. I can't wait to go over this. But if you were to try and watch something, say you had something on Prime Video or something like that. So say you found, you went on to the homepage of Amazon and you click on video, which is at the top right there, and then it should show you. This is still in the Amazon app at this moment in time, and right now it has official secrets. It has, I don't know if you can see that, it has the Meg at the top there. It's on Prime Video. I have Prime, so I want to watch the Meg on my phone for some reason. And I'm going to click on that, and it gives me the information. It says, Prime, and it says watch now, and it says it's got a trailer. I can press play on the trailer. I can just press watch now. As soon as I press watch now, it directs me to the Prime Video app. And you can tell, let's not play stuff, but it directs me to the Prime Video app. I'm now in another app. I'm now in Amazon's Prime Video Reader app. So I've bought something on the Amazon app that I cannot consume within the Amazon app. I can consume in other places on other platforms, and then in order to consume that content on iOS, I must use the Reader app, which Amazon has made it so that gets automatically redirected to from the Amazon app. Interesting point of note, you cannot buy Amazon Video from within the Amazon app. Why? Why is that the case? And I was like, I don't know. Why is that the case? And here's where it gets super interesting. So let me go back onto Amazon. And this goes back to the special treatment, like special arrangement stuff that I was talking about before. In here, their special arrangement quote right there. I'm just opening a bunch of things. If I go into Amazon and say I want to watch Mission Impossible, I'm going to search amazon.co.uk for Mission Impossible. Click on Mission Impossible. I get taken straight to Prime Video. And it tells me I can watch the trailer. There's no buy option here, by the way. There's no buy option now. If I click on something that's available on Prime Video, it will give me a Watch Now option, and it will redirect me to Prime Video. But there's no buy option in this. I cannot buy something from within this app. However, if I click on Watch Trailer, it will redirect me to Prime Video, and it will take me to the Mission Impossible screen. And now if I go back, I'm now in Prime Video, and look at that, right? Look at that. Mission Impossible, what does it say? Rent video HD £3.49, right there. Yeah? So I can get that for £3.49 on Prime Video. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking, well, according to the rules, I'm now buying something. I'm buying a video that I'm buying something. I'm buying a video that I'm going to consume in the same app. That must go through in-app purchase. That must go through in-app purchase. According to App Store guidelines, that must go through in-app purchase. Because at this point, it's not a reader app anymore. At this point, it is a app that I'm using to purchase content and then watch it. I've not bought it outside of the iOS ecosystem. I'm buying it within the iOS ecosystem, and I'm consuming it within the iOS ecosystem. And if I want to do that, I'm supposed to use in-app purchase. That's not the case. I'm not going to show you this bit, but it does say in-app purchase. So for one thing, it does say in-app purchases are included, but this is where it gets weird. The weird thing is that when you're on the Prime Video app, you can't choose your payment method. You can't say, I want to pay through this way or pay through that way. If you go on your settings on App Video and you go down to My Account and click on Manage Account, it will tell you that Prime, your payment method is Visa, Delta, Electron, blah, blah, blah. And it says manage your Prime membership on Amazon and manage your Prime Video channels on Amazon. So they know that I have my card on file. They have my debit card on file at Amazon. And if I try and buy something on the Prime Video app, it will use my card. Now we know from the rules, we've read the guidelines. We know this is against the rules. But I did some research, and basically, you find this another article by The Verge. Thank you, The Verge. Amazon Prime Video. This is very recent, by the way. 1st of April 2020. Amazon Prime Video now allows in-app rentals and purchases on the iPhone, iPad, and Apple TV. Amazon's Prime Video and iOS Apple TV apps now let customers make in-app purchases, including renting and buying films and TV shows. The change makes a huge shift in Amazon's approach to the App Store, which mandates a 30% cut on all in-app purchases. Prior to the change, Amazon would not allow you to rent or buy content on the Prime Video app, instead directing users to a web browser to avoid the App Store fee. Again, this is against the rules. I'm not sure how they got away with this. I have no idea. But you could still sign up for Prime Video subscription through the iOS app if you're not an Amazon Prime subscriber. Even then, you could not make individual content purchases from within the app. So they probably increased the price of Amazon Prime subscriptions through iOS as opposed to directly. Now, when users log into Prime Video, there should be a message reading, browse, rent, or buy new releases, popular TV shows, and more. Now within the app. Big thanks to George Watson, who tipped us off to this change. The prices do not appear to have raised to account for the 30% fee, and some platform owners, like Spotify, have done in the past. It was not immediately clear whether Amazon reached a deal with Apple or whether it is indeed deciding to pay the full cut. But Amazon has since confirmed that it entered Amazon Prime Video into an established program for premium video providers. Apple has an established program for premium subscription and video entertainment providers to offer a variety of customer benefits, including integration with the Apple TV app, AirPlay 2 support, tvOS apps, and Universal Search Series support, and where applicable, single or zero sign-on. Apple said in a statement to The Verge. On qualifying premium video entertainment apps such as Prime Video, Atlas One, and Canal Plus, customers have the option to buy or rent movies and TV shows using the payment method tied into their existing video subscription. Amazon did not reply to the request for comment. In the new Prime Video app does not require an update. There is now a full-blown store tab at the bottom which features lists of popular movies to rent, including many recently released films like Invisible Man and Sonic the Hedgehog that were in theatres in February and March. According to user reports and Apple statement, Amazon is processing purchases using its own stored payment methods and through its own processor, so long as a user has an account with the information on that file. That's a notable change on how all forms of in-app purchases have been handled before. Typically, Apple takes 30% fee. Apple only takes 15% from subscriptions as long as the customer signed up for the services within the iOS app and has maintained it for more than a year. Deal was struck between Amazon and Apple. It's not a wholly unique one. It's been in place for some time, although it's unclear when it started. Again, so that's probably to do with the linking out to the main to the website if they want to buy something, because that's against the rules as well. And yeah, it just goes on. But basically, the way it works is that if you have something on file with Amazon Prime Video, if you have a card on file, it'll use your card. If you don't, it will use in-app purchases. And then the interesting thing is that now you can't buy anything on Amazon's main app for consuming on Prime Video. So you can't go on Amazon app and say, I want to buy it and use my card. When that means that they've basically done a trade. So they've basically said, okay, so here's our special arrangement, Apple has said. And again, Apple has some interest in this as well. So Apple and Amazon have said to, have said to each other. So Apple said to Amazon, has said, right, so clearly it's not a great user experience on your Prime Video app right now. We've got an agreement at the moment. We've agreed that your Prime Video app is a reader app, right? So you can't buy anything. But we've made a special arrangement. We've said, so if someone wants to buy something, we'll let you link out to the web browser so that they can buy it there and then they can come back to the Prime Video app and then start watching it. That's fine. You can have that. That'll be a special agreement between you and me. And they've changed that now. And they've said, right, so what we're going to do instead is you can have Prime Video work as a video service. So you can sell things on there. You can let people buy individual shows on there. Anything you want. However, you're not allowed to let people manage their payment options within the Prime Video app. To all intents and purposes, it is a reader app unless the person who is using that app knows about it sort of outside of the app. They know that they've gone and set up their card details on Amazon. And so what that means is that people who are ignorant of that end up using that purchases. And then Apple have gone one step further and say, we will give you this, but only if you make it so that people can't buy them on the Amazon main app. So that means that it simplifies that Amazon app, because otherwise they would have to then make it so that in-app purchases apply to Prime Video purchases on the Amazon app, in the case where there's not already a card set up, which would be very complicated and just not worth the effort. So instead what they've said is, you can't buy them on the Amazon app. We'll just redirect you to the Prime Video app, at which point our logic will take over, which is because we know when you're on the Prime Video app, we know for certain that we don't have to worry too much about taxing, because we know what it is. We know what you're buying. You're buying digital video. The problem is a lot simpler. And we know that, you can tell us whether they've got a card set up or not. So all you do is you query your own database, you query your own backend services, and you say, they've not got a card set up. To direct them to in-app purchases. So they're giving up 30% of those. They're giving up 30% of those sales, knowing that for the vast majority of purchases that are made on that store, on that app, they will be from people who have cards set up on Amazon, because Amazon are huge. That's a trade that they've been willing to make. And I find that fascinating, because this is not old. This is April. And so I find it really funny that here is an example. This is a clear example of Apple making special arrangements with people. They have a special arrangement. So then to go back and say it's outrageous that Epic wants special arrangements, and it's outrageous because our guidelines are there to create a level playing field for all developers and to make the store safe for all users. But it's not a level playing field for all developers, because the guidelines don't mean anything at the end of the day. What means something is the rules applying to all the small guys, all the guys that you don't like, all the guys that you can't negotiate terms with. And as long as you can make some money out of it, you'll happily renege. I don't know how to pronounce that word. It's kind of weird. You'll happily step back on the guidelines as long as you can come to some sort of negotiation, some sort of agreement of terms that means that you get a bit more money. Because again, you got to remember. So previous to this change, to this Apple Prime Video, this Amazon Prime Video change, Apple wasn't making any money off of digital video sold on Prime Video. Now at least they're making some money. Now at least they're making a little bit more money. So Apple's made money, and they're happy with that. They're happy with that solution. It's just funny. Just funny because there are clear examples of them having special arrangements, and it does not take a lot of digging. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy that makes apps and web apps and things like that. And I found this out after about a couple of days. So that Epic are going to do it. And again, I do find it a bit weird that Epic have... is that the Google one? No, that's the Google one. The Apple one. I do find it a bit weird that Epic has gone at Amazon and Uber and Airbnb when this special arrangement is far more damning of Apple's position than Uber or Grubhub or Amazon itself. So yeah, that's my view. I think it's fascinating. I want Epic to win in some way or another. I want them to get them to make an injunction. For me personally, I want to make it so that I don't have to hamstring a companion app in order to get past Apple's terms of service, to get past their developer guidelines. If my app if its primary value is the fact that it's tied to a web app, I shouldn't have to pass such stringent developer guidelines to get my app on the App Store, because that's not where the value is. You're not losing money because the app is good. You're gaining money because app is good. Because I'm sounding like a caveman now because I've talked so much. Your phone, your commodity, which is the iPhone, is becoming more valuable because it supports applications that are used by people outside on other platforms. So that's what I want. I want Apple to make more. I want Apple to make more exceptions. I think they need to get more granular in the way they apply the guidelines. I think the guidelines as a principle are good. I think the guidelines as a principle are the reason why iOS is such a successful. I think the guidelines are why iOS is such a successful market. I think the guidelines and the curation and all of that, I think that's the reason why on average users spend twice as much on iOS than they do on Android. It's because people are more comfortable spending money on Apple because they feel like they're going to get, they're safer, like their money is being looked after and things like that. I just think that their obsession with control is just too much. They're upset they are asking for too much too often, and they're going to end up setting us back years and years in technology and innovation and revolution. I think that it's better for the consumer, it's better for developers, it's better for everyone if Apple has to be made to take a step back and say, how can we make this market fairer for everyone? How can we make our product better? That's it. It's been an hour and 51 minutes. I'm going to put this up as one whole video. I don't care how long it takes. But thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've watched any bits and pieces of this, thank you very much. Please leave a comment down correcting me or anything like that. If I've got something wrong, please tell me, because this fascinates me, and I want to have all the knowledge. I want to have all the corrections. I want to know where I'm right, where I'm wrong, what you think about my opinion on where it should go, things like that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you some other time whenever I make a video, and hopefully it's less than 1 hour and 52 minutes long. So thank you very much for watching. See you later. Bye.